Honor the Mayor, General Doolittle, soldiers, ladies and gentlemen, coming over here, there was a very great lesson. The first 4 hours, we passed over a destroyed land, utterly destroyed. You who have not seen it do not know what hell looks like from the top. That's what Germany looks like. That's what Austria looks like. That's what any place that the 8th Air Force and the 3rd Army worked on looks like.
What is up, guys? Proto Bro here, infamous brother to Mega Bro, and what I'm going to show you in this tutorial is how to build a division, how to properly build a division in Black Ice, and then I'm going to show you is the hierarchical structure of the military, specifically your ground forces in Black Ice, how to essentially do it, how the mechanics work, and then what I'm going to show you is really the leadership traits, how leaders play into that, and then finally just kind of a brief overview of the battle system. So notice here we're under the production tab under division, and here we have the different brigades that are available to you. Now in vanilla, what you were able to get away with is you could really just put a boatload of light infantry brigades all in one, and that was your division, or a boatload of infantry, and that was your division. What Black Ice has done is really kind of, I think, simulate really the realistic way that a division would be constructed. You wouldn't have 6 or 7 brigades of infantry. Instead, what you would have is 1 or 2 brigades of infantry supported by a brigade of motorized infantry attachment. So kind of a smaller brigade. So right here, see the strength's 4,000, whereas the actual infantry brigade's 9,000. And then maybe some pack artillery and engineers and so forth. So what Black Ice does, it encourages you to mix and match and also maximize the different positives of each division type, or division type, brigade type. So for example, if we take say we want to make an infantry division, right? So first you got to pick is the main brigade type that you want to make the division out of. One of the ways to tell is if you look at the total number here. That's one way that'll tell you. I think also the this light color here kind of gives you an idea as well, although you wouldn't want a HQ defense attachment as your primary. So let's just say for right now we're just going to do infantry. So now one of the things, as we'll note later on, just kind of keep track of the battle width, the combat width. Some of these don't have any combat width, like these attachments here. This one does. That's another indication that this is kind of a primary of your division. Again, you can make as many as you want. But usually the rule of thumb is 1 or 2. So let's just, for the sake of argument, make it 2. And then kind of pay attention to this here, combined arms bonus as we do this. So we've got 2 infantry brigades. We don't want to really, if we want to attach armor, we don't want to attach light armor to this, because again, this is 6K, 2 battle width, so on and so forth. Instead what we want to do is take a light armor attachment or something like that. Again, the primary focus is infantry here, and it's going to be supported by a tank. So we put that on there. And then let's give it some artillery. Right now I'm just throwing crap in there. There's really no rhyme or reason to this right now. Anti-aircraft division. And then do we have, okay, then we don't have any recon. So then maybe like an armored car for recon or something. Oh, alright. Let's take that out and do recon. Okay, so we're allowed 7 brigades in a division, and we've got 7 in here. Again, all this is determined by cost. So what these here will tell you, and what's nice is you hover over, it'll tell you exactly what they are. Again, why I love Hearts of Iron, because it actually does that. Some games don't. But you'll notice as you add brigades to the division, this number up here will increase. This is telling you the total for this particular division, total division stats. So you got 24,000 troops in this division. They have 5 combat width, 27 soft attack, which is goes directly to infantry units that you're hitting. 12 hard attack, which deals with like an infantry's light armor brigade or an actual armor brigade, or rather armor division. Piercing attack, this is right here, right? How will they penetrate armor? And also, it's also used to kind of determine how effective you are at kind of that initial hit. When you hit the enemy initially, whether you can kind of break through the lines quickly. The armor level, air attack, which is 16, defense, which is 59, which is actually pretty good. Toughness, how many times a brigade can have a chance of avoiding being hit while in the attack. Air defense, and then finally your softness, the number of soft and hard attacks a brigade can receive. All of this stuff here is modified individually by your different brigades. So again, I know if you're new to the game, this is a lot to take in. Really just what you need to focus on is that really can mix and match divisions however you like, and depending on what you put in here affects these overall numbers. And if you're not really sure, like for example, like artillery, we threw artillery in there. Well, let's take artillery out. These numbers changed. Let's put pack artillery instead, and you can look at the numbers. Sometimes they don't drastically affect, they don't change that much, and if they don't change that much but the cost is essentially the same. So this is 22 IC industrial complex to build. If you recall from one of my previous videos, you know, industrial complex, and unless you're in wartime, it's tough to come by. So 22 could be a big chunk out of your industrial complex. This could be a really expensive division to build. And so if I don't have the money to build this, maybe I take out some of these things, and now it's 19 to build, right? And then manpower, right? This here correlates with this number up here, and number of days that it's going to build. And then you can affect whether you build them back to back to back. So 28 months to build 4 of these divisions or whatever. If you recall from my previous videos, you want to try and do serial builds wherever possible, because each new build will be a little bit cheaper. So instead of 1978 on build 2, maybe it's 1970 or whatever. If you do that for lots of different things, especially in wartime, it'll make a difference. And then notice here, this is from your research tab, these sort of things here. But remember I said look at here. If you're not sure how to mix and match, one of the things that the creators of Black Ice did is they did build you some built-in templates that are, I think, good reference points to kind of see, okay, how did they build it? And notice here, so for your infantry division, you have an artillery, you've got an anti-tank all the way down. And what this does is mixing and matching these essentially created these bonuses. So here you've got a division HQ, which gives you a combined armor bonus. You have a veteran HQ, which is again from this one here. Actually, no, I'm sorry, it's just this one right here, division. As you increase your tech, you'll get these options, so you can attach basically a veteran division HQ instead of just a division HQ. And what that does is that it gives you basically a modifier to your combined armor bonus. We have recon attached, so that's again another combined armor bonus. And then we have here, we have artillery, we have direct fire, and then we have assault, so your engineer unit here. So essentially what you want to try and do is when you build these divisions, you want to try and get as many of these colored in as possible, right? So you want to try and get something from this here, you want to try and get something from here, you want to try and get something from here, all the way down, and then to increase this number down here from 16%. Notice if we take out the engineer, for example, that goes down to 14%. Also too, you'll notice our defense will have gone down and so forth. So defense is 37 currently. Take out engineer, now it's 27. Also too, without the engineer, you won't be able to really engage in any crosswater. So see here, this terrain will tell you all this stuff. All these things. So planes attack 20%. Let's see. Let's focus. So see river attack 61%. Kind of towards the bottom there. Take out that engineer. Now river attack 68%. Also your planes attack has been drastically reduced as well. Now all these things adjust, right? So the bonus you may get from engineer will change depending on the amount of research you put into the engineer divisions and technology. But you can go through all these here. It's good to kind of it gives you lay of the land in terms of how to build it. Good suggestions here. I typically, when I build my divisions, I follow these pretty closely, at least until I get a little further in the game and I have a better understanding of what my country's capabilities are and what their strengths and weaknesses are. Notice their early panzer. Then what's cool is, so they got mid panzers, which we can't build yet because we don't have this technology, but they have it built in for us. But what you can do is you can basically remove all this and replace it and then save the template, and then you've got your own template. So here you can basically build, you know, whatever, and then once you save it, you go back, and there's our beautiful little division. Alright, so that's basically in a nutshell how to build a division. Also as reserves, so they can come in as a reserve, which will drastically reduce the cost. So see, the infantry division was 14 to build this. Bring them in as reserve, and now they're 11. All that means is that you're going to have to mobilize them here for a few months before they're fully strong, before they're at full strength.
You must remember this, that from Brest to various towns in southern Germany and Austria, whose names I can't pronounce, but whose places I have removed, the trail of the 3rd Army and the 19th Tactical Air Command and the 8th Air Force is marked by more than 40,000 white crosses, 40,000 dead Americans.
Okay, so now that I've shown you how to build a division utilizing the various, you know, mixes and matches of brigades, let's talk about the actual hierarchy of your land forces. So currently I'm zoomed in, I'm using the counters, or I took the counters off just because it's, I think, aesthetically pleasing. I tend to play with them on, sometimes off, others just kind of depends on the mood I'm in. Being zoomed all the way in with them on, I mean, it's kind of cool to be able to see like the Sherman tanks and so forth. But when you're zoomed out, I think it's a little bit easier, one, to see the full map, but then also kind of be able to see, okay, what's what, tanks, you know, it's a lot quicker. So you can use both. I play with both. But you essentially have divisions, you have corps, so the divisions are what I showed you previously on how to build them. You have the corps, then you have army, you have army group, and then finally you have HQ, theater. That's your theater. So you have essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiers of possible organization to a particular, let's say, you know, section of your land forces. Wherever possible, I encourage you to try and utilize all of these in building, and as you will see, by doing that, you're able to maximize leadership traits, leadership skill, and those sort of things, and the military tends to function more effectively. However, there are instances where perhaps you can't, either because you're playing as a minor country and you don't have the officers to make it possible or practical, or you simply are covering so much land that it makes more sense to attach your divisions to your army group, just by nature of the fact that they're operating so far outside the normal purview of the battle lines, that you need a group who can reach further than a corps. You'll notice the corps tends to operate pretty closely with the divisions, and if you have, say, these 5 divisions spread out all along the front, the corps may not be able to reach all of them. The theory being, you know, they operate with you know, certain radio systems and so forth, and the army group is set up logistically more to kind of catch far-ranging communications and so forth. So how do we attach? Alright, so first you'll see, if you click your division, you'll get the map up here. Notice here, so we'll talk about combat with in a second, but here, notice here, this is a pretty important tab that I will reference in a few minutes. But then over here you see, okay, are they fully supplied? Yes, they are. So they're consuming 5.16 supplies every day. They have 22 days left of supply from here. But so long as they're within the supply chain, they should be receiving close to green. How do you know if they're in the supply chain? Look at supply mode. So here, this is all green. We're receiving supplies from Cherbourg, and they're coming through here, and they're going out to here. If our units were here, eventually what would have to happen is that our logistics chain would have to catch up and set up a supply chain here, and so you may go a few days without supplies, but that's okay because we have 22. The same goes for fuel. right? One of the issues that the Germans had when in the Battle of the Bulge was they simply did not have enough fuel supplies. So even though they were initially successful in pushing towards Antwerp, which was the Allied chain that was providing most of the supplies and supply route to the Allied forces, they ran out of fuel. And so I guess something be similar in this game would be as if you're pushing forward through these gray areas as the Germans, and your supply chain just simply was not able to catch up, either because of battle, which would decrease the supply chain there. So for example, let's go back here. Notice here we have a decent infrastructure. Well, this would get damaged if there was combat here. It would take some time for this to build back up, which would in turn affect this unit's ability to be fully supplied. And the further that you push, just as happened to the Germans on the Eastern Front in Operation Barbarossa, can happen in this game depending on where your supply chain is. So this is one of the tabs down here that you're going to want to reference pretty frequently when you're on the offensive, just to kind of make sure, okay, do I have a wide enough front to fully supply my army? Another good point is, notice here how this is kind of narrow. It's just narrow right now because we don't have forces here. But as you push into enemy territory, you want to make sure you're pushing into areas that have the infrastructure capable of supplying your whole army. If not, then you're going to want to broaden your front to ensure that supplies are getting to the entirety of your army and not just a small section of it. HQ, this is where we're going to talk about. This is going to tell you essentially, okay, are you attached? So dug in, this is a defensive bonus that you'll see when we go to the combat thing. And then we talked about this stuff already. So you can either do this, you can either create a new corps, which you would do is if you're out of available corps to attach your division to, you could always create a whole new corps right above you, or you can attach. So this is the option we're going to use. When you click attach, you're going to get a variety of options to attach to. Notice we have a boatload of corps that are available to be attached to, a couple of army groups, rather armies, and then army groups. So I think I was misspoken previously. The green are actually armies, not army groups, and the orange is army group. So we're going to attach the third corps, which it's always going to give you the closest, the nearest thing to attach to. So this is what we want to attach to, and when we do that, notice now we have a nice little green going on here. If I didn't have the counters on, I'd be able to zoom in a little bit more and you'd be able to see it even more thoroughly. But that means that we are attached to this corps. Okay, and you can attach up to 5 divisions to a corps, and you can attach up to 5 corps or 5 units to an army, and so forth. So you really can have this army here operating 5 corps or 5 divisions, or a mix and match, 3 corps, 2 divisions, whatever, but a total of 5 for this. So let's attach the rest of these divisions to this corps. And as I'm doing this, a rule of thumb, you want to try and make your corps a combined force, which is what I alluded to in the creating of the division. But you also want to make your corps a combined force, because historically corps were intended to function independently, and what I mean by that is capable of handling any threat. So right now we're kind of a nice little mix and match, these motorized infantry divisions, which should have other brigades like we talked about, but we have the infantry, motorized infantry combined with the tanks. And so what that means is that these guys, this corps here, could function independent without relying on another corps for support. Alright. So now we've got these 5 here, and each one has assigned to them a general. What do we do now? So now, right now, we have the corps all by itself. It's got 5 divisions underneath it, which is all what we attached. But we have the corps attached to nobody else. So what do? Well, we want to attach it to an army group. Before we do that, I just want to point out here this little bar. This, if you have a corps or an army group, whatever it might be, operating by the AI, then what you can do is you can advise it in terms of what tactics, or actually, sorry, I'm misspeaking on this. Even if you're doing manual, this will basically encourage or discourage, certain tactics to be used during combat. So, for example, if we want them to be ultra aggressive, then in combat he'll be willing to take more risks when engaged with the enemy. Okay. Alright, so same option here. So we're at the core level. We can create an army, or what we can do is we can attach it. We're going to attach it. So now we're going to attach it to the third army, Patton, who now has this one core underneath it. Alright, so if you're not sure what I did there, notice that I had third core, he's underneath the army. Here's the divisions that are underneath the core. And then if we want to see the army that he's attached to, we just click this here. And there we go. There's your third core. And you can attach 4 more cores to this army, or it can be 4 more individual divisions. It's really kind of your preference, whatever the situation calls for. Again, whatever practical, I encourage you to attach cores to armies and keep that structure in place, as I will show kind of how to maximize that in a second. But then we're going to attach the army to an army group. So we want to attach it here. And again, if you're ever kind of confused on what to do, just follow the X's. 1X is brigade, which is these guys right here. 2X is division, 3X is core, 4X is army, 5X is group, and then 6X is theater. So right now we've got the army all by himself, so let's attach him to an army group. So army group's commanded by General Bradley. I want to say Lieutenant General Bradley. And then we're going to attach Lieutenant General Bradley to Ike, the great Eisenhower. Okay. So now what do we have? We have this division, which we started off from her all by itself, is now attached all the way up to General Eisenhower at the theater. And so what does that mean? This is what it means. So these guys here, these brigades, these are the bread and butter of your entire military. They're the ones that are going to be doing the heavy duty fighting on the front line. A lot of their effectiveness is going to be directly derived from the chain of command, which in turn means that their benefits and their negatives are going to be directly derived from their command chain, which starts with this guy. Now, if you're going to take anything away from this video, this is what I want you to take away from this next like 5 minutes, okay? At the division level, you will receive a 100% bonus to whatever traits that leader has. So with Gaffy, let's see here. He is a battle expert. So combined arms, 15%, experience bonus 15%, which means he'll gain experience 15% faster. He's a Medal of Honor recipient, which means offense plus 20%, defense plus 20%. And he's a U.S. general, so you get all these bonuses. This is 100% to all 3 of these. Okay. As you move up the hierarchy, it gets cut in half. So whatever bonus that this general at the core level will have will transfer down to the division level 50%. So Lieutenant General Taylor has a surprise chance of 10%. So that'll trickle down to every single division and give a 50% bonus to that particular trait. Commando, again, 50% of that. 50%. 50%. Alright? And then as you move up, it gets cut to 50%. So whatever General Patton would provide in terms of experience, or in terms of traits, would trickle down 25%. Right? Because we went 100%, 50%, now 25%. And so he's going to give to all his core, which in turn give to all of their divisions, or however you want to attach it, 25% bonus of these sort of things. So you can see like why it's so important to try and maximize this chain, because if you're any of the major powers, you probably have you have the leaders to do it, and you have good leaders to do it. And what you can do is really create a force multiplier. And what I mean by that is, you could create at the division level, the core level, the army level, the group level, so forth, offensive characteristics and traits that trickle down and become a force multiplier for your division. So instead of getting just one trait of offensive bonuses, you can get 3 or 4, which drastically impacts the capability when they're actually engaged in combat. So again, 100%, 50%, 25%, And then for army group, it's going to be 12.5 because that's half of 25%. And then finally, the theater level, which is going to be the lowest trickle down, you would get a 6.25% bonus to whatever's up here. So what does that all mean in terms of figuring out who to put what where? Excellent question, you ask. So here's my rule of thumb. This tends to be the rule of thumb out there on how to do things. Let's start at the top. So theater. Theater is going to be really your old guard generals who've been in the service for 20, 30 years, probably 30 years. Haven't seen actual combat in decades. They're more their kind of administrative, bureaucratic types. So up here, what you're going to put is you can put guys with old guard traits. In other words, they don't gain skill very quickly. So for example here, notice Eisenhower has 5 skill, and then he has these traits. So is he old guard? No. So old guard tends to be like Germans. The Japs have some, Japanese have old guard. But what this just means is that, okay, he's got 5. It's unclear how many, I'm not sure how many total he can get because it doesn't tell you in the game, but the commander here at this level isn't going to gain really any experience at all, right? So you're going to put guys that are pretty much capped out in terms of the skill level here, who have traits like old guard, which means they're not going to level very fast anyways, and they don't have really any traits to offer up, right? Because it's only at 6.25. So again, in a nutshell, for this high skill level, but essentially no traits. So historically, yeah, you want Eisenhower at the theater level, but fictionally or in the game, Eisenhower's probably going to be better at army group level, as I'll explain in a second. So army group level, this is again at 12.5%, but you do get, and I don't think Black Ice has changed this, you do get a 5% supply bonus at the army group level. So my rule of thumb has always been I want to try and put somebody here who has logistic traits that increase the supply for everyone else below them. So here we have Bradley, who's also again high skill. Again, they're not going to get a whole lot of experience operating at this level, so you want to put someone with high skill here, but then also with logistics experience, so logistic master. So supply consumption's down 12%, so that means every single unit underneath this army group is going to get that minus 12% supply consumption. Again, 12.5% of that, but still, that's pretty hefty if you consider how many divisions you can actually attach through, the 5-5-5-5 rule. And then he also has your logistics wizard. So this is exactly the kind of general I would want to attach to the army group. So to summarize, theater, old guard guys who aren't going to level very quick, very high skill level, and really no traits to offer at the theater level. Army group, you want, again, high skill level guy, but you want anyone who has logistics traits at the army group level. Okay. Also, too, side note, this is typically where you're going to attach your naval and air forces. You're going to attach them to the group level until you get HQs, which are essentially like these here, these core size things. But for the naval and air, if you don't have the equivalent of it for the naval and air, you would just attach them to your army group here. This is also kind of where the army or the AI likes to operate from, is the army group level. So if you like playing with the AI, then what you would do is you would essentially tailor your you kind of tailor your structure based around the army group. For example, in Operation Barbarossa, they had North, Center, and South army groups, and that's really what pushed the offensive into Barbarossa. All right, next step, third army group. This is going to be 25%, again, of the bonus is going to trickle down to the corps and the division level. This is where you're going to want your combined forces. So you're going to want, say if you have 5 corps attached to the army, you're going to want basically 5 corps that work interchangeably. So 2 corps that are maybe infantry, and then the other 3 corps are armor, or however you may want to do it. But essentially this group, you're going to want this army here to be kind of its own thing. A good example of that is in Battle of the Bulge. Patton had he had autonomy. He didn't have to lean on any other army group to accomplish what his mission was going to be, what his set objective was. Why? Because his group was set up in such a way that it could operate independently. He didn't have to lean on any other army group to accomplish a particular objective. Here, you can basically attach, if you attach 5 corps to this army, and you have 5 divisions attached to that corps, that's effectively 25 divisions that you can influence in terms of traits. So what I typically do here is I'm going to put mid-level generals, maybe 3 skill-ish thereabouts, but have traits like offensive traits. Because again, you can, with a force multiplier, and when I say that I mean if you have a corps commander who also has offensive, and you have a army group that has, or army that has offensive, you can really you can affect 25 divisions that way, and it's very effective. So for example, we have Trickster, Assault Master, so all these things are going to apply to 25 different divisions and can be very effective. Corps level. This is, I think, in terms of if you're looking at just traits alone, this is the most important. What I try and do at the corps level is I try and take a command, any kind of general who has like a boatload of traits. And if you kind of take the approach that I'm explaining to you and apply it, you'll find that kind of mid-game, you're going to have a ton of generals that have a ton of traits. And those guys with tons of traits, you're going to want to stick at the corps level. All right? The skill number isn't all that important, as long as maybe they're kind of mid-skill. But what you're looking for is traits, and again, the reason is because you get a 50% bonus for that, and you can affect 5 divisions that way. So for corps, you want boatload of traits, and maybe mid-skill, whatever. Division level, and this kind of sounds counterintuitive, but hear me out. You want a general with basically no traits and very low skill. And why is that? Because they receive the most experience in combat. And you'll find, especially in Black Ice, it doesn't take too many actual battles for these guys to start accumulating some serious traits and some serious experience. What you'll see here is on here, currently no traits to gain. Once they start engaging in battle, it'll start showing you what traits are currently in progress of kind of, I guess, manifesting and showing up here. And it's usually based around the combat that they see. So if they fight in mountainous terrain, for example, you'll start seeing traits that apply to mountainous terrain. Airborne, right? They'll start getting airborne traits, those sort of things. And so it's a really good way to kind of beef up your leadership corps. Get a bunch of generals with a lot of traits here, and then what you do is you promote them to the corps level. And so really, if you notice, right, it's very, very similar to real life. You start off with not a whole lot of experience at the lower level. As you build up experience and training, and kind of develop new ideas and doctrines on how to apply things, you move up through the chain of command, and then you end up at the top, where you're kind of really a bureaucrat at that point, an administrative general who hasn't seen combat in a while, but has a boatload of experience and kind of can take that and manage an entire army. So with that, let's talk about just really quick combat.